They seemed like ordinary moments, a new friendship, a fresh start, a quiet neighborhood, but beneath the surface hid something far more sinister. Each story peels back the thin layer of safety we cling to, from the mysterious man who appeared and vanished without a trace, to a rental home with a terrifying history, to the kind of moment where you realize you're not alone, and maybe never were. If you are new to this channel and enjoy scary true stories like these, please help this channel grow by subscribing and turning on notifications. Every subscription helps us bring you more real horror stories that keep you up at night. Thank you for your support. I didn't grow up in a particularly scary neighborhood. Brookridge Lane was your standard suburban stretch. Nice lawns, quiet families, a couple of retired folks who waved when you drove by. The kind of place you wouldn't associate with anything dark. That was kind of the whole appeal. After I graduated and got a steady job in graphic design, I moved back to Maryland and found a rental house on that very street. It felt like the perfect full circle moment. The house was older but well maintained. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, and a backyard with enough space for my dog Toby to run around in. The first few weeks were uneventful. I worked from home, occasionally drove into the city to meet with clients, and spent my evenings unwinding with Netflix and a glass of wine. Toby adjusted quickly and seemed to love the place, which made me feel even better about the decision. If you'd asked me then if anything felt off about the house, I would have said no. But looking back, there were small things, little inconsistencies that I chalked up to the quirks of an old home. One of the first was the back door. It was this heavy wooden thing with an old brass handle, and no matter how hard I tried, it never seemed to close flush with the frame, unless I locked it. Sometimes I'd find it open by an inch or two in the morning, even though I could swear I had shut and locked it the night before. I blamed Toby at first. He was a husky mix, and smart as hell, so it wasn't impossible to imagine him figuring out how to nudge it open. But one night I heard the door click, loud and distinct, like someone opening it slowly. I rushed to the kitchen with a flashlight, heart pounding, but no one was there. Toby was curled up on the couch, not even stirred. That was the first time I didn't sleep well in that house. Then there were the voices, not whispering, not mumbling, more like the muted sound of people having a conversation behind a closed door. It started in the guest room. I'd be working late, sitting in the living room, and I'd hear what sounded like 2 people talking in low tones. Whenever I walked down the hall and opened the door, nothing. The room would be empty, lights off, perfectly quiet. I even tried recording it on my phone once, but of course on playback, nothing. Dead silence. It escalated in October, about a month after I moved in. I was asleep one night and woke up suddenly around 3 in the morning. Toby was whining softly at the foot of the bed, ears pinned back, tail between his legs. That wasn't like him. He usually slept like a rock. I sat up, still groggy, and immediately noticed something weird. The hallway light was on. I never leave that light on, ever. I got out of bed and walked slowly toward the hall. My house has that kind of eerie stillness at night, where every step echoes a little too loudly. I turned the corner and froze. The guest room door was wide open. I stood there for a second, listening. There were no voices this time, no footsteps, nothing. I slowly walked down the hall and peeked inside. The light from the hallway spilled just enough to show that the bed hadn't been slept in, and everything was where I'd left it. But the closet door, usually shut, was slightly ajar. I walked over and pulled it open. Empty. I didn't sleep at all that night. I locked my bedroom door and left the hallway light on until sunrise. I started keeping a baseball bat under my bed. After that, a couple nights later, I got a call from my neighbor, Mrs. Dwyer. She was this sweet older lady who lived next door with her husband. She said she'd noticed my kitchen light on at odd hours and wanted to make sure I was okay. I told her about the door, the voices, the lights. I didn't even care if she thought I was losing it. To my surprise, she didn't look shocked. She got quiet. Then she told me something I'll never forget. You know that house was empty for a while, right? Last guy that lived there, he left in the middle of the night, left his car in the driveway, and just vanished. Cops looked into it, but they never found anything. His sister said he'd been acting strange before he disappeared, said he thought someone was watching him. I thanked her and tried to act unfazed, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I started doing my own digging, public records, news articles, anything I could find. And it's true. His name was Daniel Stokes, mid-30s, lived alone, worked remotely. Sound familiar? There wasn't much in the police report, just that he stopped responding to calls from his family. They did a wellness check, found the door unlocked, and his phone on the kitchen counter, the back door, wide open. I started seeing things after that. I'm not even sure how to explain it. A figure, always out of the corner of my eye, usually at night, just standing in the hallway, or sometimes by the living room window. Every time I looked straight at it, it was gone, but Toby saw it too. He'd growl, low and deep, and stare into the same corner I'd just seen movement in. The worst night was in late November. I woke up around 3 a.m. again, and I immediately knew something was wrong. The air felt wrong, heavy. My room was ice cold, even though the heater had been running. Toby was sitting rigidly at the edge of the bed, growling, and then I saw it. Someone was standing in the doorway. I couldn't make out their face, just a tall dark silhouette, completely still. I couldn't move. My body felt like it was sinking into the mattress, paralyzed by fear. I don't know how long I lay there before I managed to whisper, "Who are you?" No answer, but the figure stepped forward. I grabbed the bat and leapt out of bed, swinging blindly, but there was nothing there. The hallway was empty. No footsteps, no sound, nothing. Just that same oppressive silence. I called my brother and told him everything. He offered to come stay with me, but I couldn't wait. I packed a bag and checked into a hotel that night. I couldn't be in that house another second. A few days later, I went back in the daylight to grab the rest of my stuff. I left the front door wide open and kept Toby leashed by my side. Every time I walked into a room, I announced it, like that would somehow help. When I opened the guest room closet again, there was something new, a series of deep, vertical scratches down the inside of the door. They hadn't been there before, I'm sure of it. It looked like someone had clawed at the wood with both hands. I moved out by the end of that week, lost my deposit, didn't care. I left a note for the landlord, suggesting they get the place blessed or cleansed, or whatever it is you're supposed to do. I never got a response. That was almost a year ago. I still live in Maryland, but I've never gone back to Brookridge Lane. Sometimes I dream about that house, and in the dreams, I'm walking through it, room by room, but it's different now, darker, decayed, almost like it knows I'm there. Toby still gets jumpy at night, even though we're in a brand new place. And sometimes, if I wake up at 3 a.m., I swear I see a shadow in the hallway. But now, I just close my eyes and wait for the morning. I haven't told this story to anyone, at least not the full thing. Every time I start, I end up brushing it off, or joking my way out of the conversation. People wouldn't believe me anyway, and I've spent the last few years trying to convince myself that it wasn't what I think it was. But even now, just thinking about that night gives me chills. This happened back in 2017, when I was 22. My cousin Adam and I used to go on these late-night fishing trips during the summer. He had this small but sturdy motorboat that he kept at a marina on Lake Norris in Tennessee. We'd both just finished college, hadn't started working yet, and were spending most of that summer hanging out before real life caught up to us. The lake was huge, with miles of shoreline and fingers of water that stretched way into the woods. People would say it was peaceful, serene. We used to love going out around 10 or 11 p.m. and staying until the early morning hours. There was something eerie but calming about being out there in the pitch black, just you, the boat, and the quiet slap of water against the hull. One night, we decided to fish in one of the more remote arms of the lake. It was a part where the water curved sharply and disappeared into dense uninhabited forest. No docks, no cabins, no cell signal, just trees and shadows. We packed a cooler, a Bluetooth speaker, and headed out. The night started off like any other. We had music playing low, beers cracked open, and the stars were insane that night. You could see the Milky Way, like a faint glowing ribbon, stretching across the sky. The fishing wasn't great, but we didn't care. We were just enjoying the peace. Around 1:30 a.m., this thick fog started rolling in. It was weird because the air was still and warm. No temperature drop that we noticed. The fog came in quick. 1 minute you could see across the lake, and the next you could barely see past the edge of the boat. We figured it was just one of those freak things, and decided to ride it out. We turned off the engine, and just floated, listening to the water and laughing at how creepy it all suddenly felt. Adam made a joke about ghost ships and lake monsters, and we both laughed, but I could tell we were both getting uneasy. Then we heard a splash, not close, but definitely not far either, just a single splash, like something heavy stepping into the water. We both paused, then a second splash, this one louder. We turned off the speaker to listen better, and that's when we realized we weren't alone. We couldn't see anything through the fog, but we could hear the sound of something or someone moving through the water, not swimming, walking. It was this heavy, deliberate step, one after another, like something dragging itself slowly through the lake toward us. Adam whispered, "What the hell is that?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like I couldn't even breathe. We just sat there in complete silence, straining our ears. The step stopped. That should have been a relief, but it made everything worse. The silence was heavier than before, and then we both heard it. A faint, slow breathing, raspy and wet, like someone who'd nearly drowned and was trying to catch their breath. Adam started the motor, and I swear I've never seen him move that fast in my life. But the engine sputtered and died immediately. Tried it again. Nothing. Just a click. We checked the fuel. Still half a tank. Then the boat rocked. Just once. Like something had grabbed the side and tugged it slightly. Not a wave. Not a fish. A pull. I turned to the edge, my phone's flashlight already on, and I pointed it into the fog. The beam didn't reach far, but I caught something. Two pale, milky eyes, staring just above the surface of the water, wide open, unblinking. Then they were gone. Adam had dropped to his knees, working the battery cables, and I was frozen, staring out into the mist. The boat rocked again, this time harder. I snapped out of it, and helped him check the lines. Everything looked normal, but nothing was working. We grabbed the oars and started rowing. We had no choice. It was slow going, and every few seconds we'd hear the sound of something moving in the water, pacing us, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, always just out of view. Then we heard the whispering. I'm not exaggerating. It was whispering, clear as day, but it wasn't in any language. I understood. It sounded broken, wet, like words spoken through a mouthful of water. Adam looked at me, wide-eyed. He heard it too, and then laughter, a child's laugh, coming from right behind us. We both turned so fast we nearly tipped the boat. Nothing, just fog. I've never felt more scared in my entire life. I don't care how that sounds. I've had guns pulled on me before, been in car accidents, but this felt wrong, like something was toying with us. We finally reached the main channel of the lake, and the fog began to thin. The second we could see stars again, the boat engine suddenly cranked, like nothing had been wrong. We didn't ask questions. Adam gunned it all the way back to the marina. We got in the car and sat there for at least 30 minutes, neither of us speaking. Then he said, "That wasn't a person." I nodded. We didn't talk about it again for a long time. But a few weeks later, Adam sent me a link. It was an old forum thread about paranormal sightings around Lake Norris. I read through it and stopped cold at one post. It described exactly what we saw: the fog, the eyes, the whispers, the laughter. The person said they'd encountered it as a teen, and they were convinced it wasn't human. One guy in the comments said he saw a pale figure walk out of the water one night, then vanish into the trees. Another claimed something had grabbed the side of his kayak and tried to pull him under, but when he got to shore, there wasn't a scratch on the hull. Since that night, I've had dreams where I'm back on the boat, drifting through fog, and I can see those eyes watching from the water. Sometimes I hear the laughter again. Sometimes I wake up and swear I can smell lake water on my pillow. I haven't been back out on the lake after dark since then. Adam sold the boat the following spring, and never mentioned why, but I know, whatever is out there, whatever we encountered that night, it's still there, waiting in the fog. I've never been the kind of person who trusted people too quickly, but sometimes, when the timing is right, and the vibe is easy, you let your guard down. You ignore that small voice in the back of your mind that tells you something feels off. And once you've let someone in, it's a lot harder to get them out. This happened last fall. I had just moved into a new apartment in a mid-sized city, not too urban, not too suburban. My job allowed me to work remote, and I was in the phase of trying to rebuild my social circle after a breakup and a long-distance move. I wasn't really into dating again just yet, but I was open to making new friends. That's how I met Chris. I met him at a kickback my co-worker Jen invited me to. It wasn't a big party, maybe 15 people, mostly friends of friends. I ended up next to Chris while waiting for drinks in the kitchen, and we just started chatting. He was tall, easygoing, had that kind of confidence that felt unforced. He told me he'd lived in the city for a couple years, but had moved around a lot growing up. We talked about music, random road trips, bad roommates, just a natural, easy conversation. He even brought up a book I had just started reading, which seemed like a weird coincidence at the time. We exchanged numbers, followed each other on Instagram, and that was that. Over the next few days, Chris started texting me casually, nothing pushy, just memes, funny links, comments on my stories. He had this friendly, just checking in vibe that made him feel familiar fast. We ended up grabbing coffee that Saturday afternoon, and again it just felt like we clicked. He wasn't hitting on me. It was more like we were building a friendship, and I honestly liked that. Over the next couple weeks, we hung out a few more times, mostly in group settings. A trivia night, drinks at a brewery, stuff like that. Each time, Chris just kind of blended in, knew how to talk to everyone without being too loud or attention-seeking. My friends started noticing how often he was around, asking how we met, if we were a thing. I'd just laugh and say no, because we weren't, not really. Then one weekend in October, I mentioned I'd be alone. My roommate was going back to her hometown, and I planned to spend a weekend cleaning, catching up on work, and watching movies. Chris joked that I was going to be the most boring person alive, and said we should have a mini horror movie marathon at my place. Just friends, no pressure. I hesitated, not because I felt unsafe, but because I'm a pretty private person. I don't love having people over, especially ones I don't know that well. But I figured, what's the harm? One night, a couple movies, snacks, low-key. He showed up around 7 p.m. on Friday, brought snacks, a bottle of wine, even a couple of old DVDs. I remember thinking he was weirdly old school for someone who looked so modern. But whatever, it was charming. We made popcorn, turned the lights down, and watched The Ring and Hereditary. The mood was chill, nothing sketchy. He never made any weird moves. When the second movie ended around midnight, I figured that would be the cue to wrap it up. But then it started raining, like pouring. Chris looked at the window and half joked that it was probably safer to just crash on the couch than drive home in that. I didn't really want him staying over, but I also didn't feel like being a jerk. So I said sure. I gave him a blanket and a pillow and went to bed. I barely slept that night, not because of Chris, at least not at first, but because I kept hearing little creaks and soft thuds. My apartment building is older, so it's not totally unusual, but I remember waking up more than once, just feeling off, like someone was standing near the door. The next morning, I got up and went to the kitchen, expecting Chris to be asleep, but he was already up, sitting on the couch, scrolling his phone, like he'd been awake for hours. He offered to make coffee, said he found the French press in my cabinet. I never told him where that was. I shook it off. Maybe he just opened a few cabinets and got lucky. Still, something about it bugged me. He ended up staying for most of the day, said he had no plans, didn't want to drive in the rain, and figured we could hang out again. I didn't know how to ask him to leave without sounding rude, and part of me felt like I shouldn't feel so weird. I invited him. He'd been nothing but friendly, but the feeling in my gut got worse, like something wasn't sinking. That night, I said I was going to bed early, and figured he'd take the hint. He didn't. When I came out of the bathroom, he was still on the couch, headphones in, watching something on his phone. I stood there for a second, trying to think of what to say, but he looked up and said, "Go ahead, I'll lock up." It was just 2 words, "I'll lock up," but they didn't sit right. My door has a bolt lock that can only be locked from the inside, which meant if he locked up, he'd have to stay, and he knew that. I didn't say anything. I just went to my room, closed the door, and locked it. I lay there in bed for over an hour, listening. I didn't hear anything at first, no creaks, no movement, but then sometime after 2 a.m., I heard footsteps, soft ones, moving from the living room into the hallway. I froze. I could hear the floorboards shift in the exact spot outside my door. Then, silence. No knock, no sound, just nothing. I didn't sleep after that. In the morning, when I opened my door, Chris was gone. So was the blanket, the pillow. There was no note, no text, just gone. I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe he left early, realized he overstayed, and didn't want to wake me. But the feeling didn't fade. It got worse. That Sunday evening, I checked my Instagram. He'd unfollowed me. His account was gone, like, completely deleted. I tried his number, disconnected. I even asked Jen, the co-worker who threw the party, where I met him. She swore she never invited a Chris, didn't know who I was talking about. I asked a few other people from the party. No one remembered him. I dug back through my DMs, trying to find the first message we exchanged. His profile was gone. I searched his name on every platform I could think of. Nothing. It was like he never existed, except he had been there. In my apartment. I wasn't hallucinating. I had the open snacks, the wine cork, the DVDs he left behind. And the weirdest thing, my roommate came back Monday night and noticed something I hadn't. In the hallway closet, where we keep old cleaning supplies and seasonal junk, someone had moved things around. There was a folded blanket on the floor, an old pillow from our linen closet, and a stack of my mail. My personal mail. It was like someone had been in there, maybe more than once. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept thinking back to every little moment that didn't sit right. How he always seemed to know what I was going to say. How he knew where things were in my apartment without asking. How he showed up in my life out of nowhere and then disappeared just as fast. I filed a report with the building. They checked the security cameras. No footage of him ever entering or leaving. Not once. And that's when I realized, I don't think I ever saw him walk in. Not that first night. Not when he stayed over. Not even when we ran into each other in public places. It's been months now, and I still check every door twice. I still wake up at night and think I hear movement in the hallway. Because sometimes I wonder, what if he never left?